Welcome back to OurTribe, the podcast. I'm your host, Tuvia Kopstein. In this episode, we have the pleasure of sitting down with Val Katayev. Val is a big business success, whatever he puts his mind to. He has built tremendous things from really bootstrapping from nothing. He entered the internet space and the search engine space very early on, and he exited from it. He entered the ringtone distribution space, if you even know what that is, and he built big businesses out of all of this. He then retired at an early age, at about 32 years old, and now he's back in the business world since about 6 or 7 years ago, servicing jewelry, family-owned jewelry stores and franchises. He has a great story to tell, many insights about what it is to build up businesses, to sell businesses, how to be involved, dealing with personnel, dealing with corporations, data, and also he tells his Jewish story, which is also very inspiring and unique. OurTribe, the podcast, is a project of the Podcast Fellowship, podcastfellowship.org. We are an international Jewish outreach nonprofit which helps connect Jewish 18 to 32-year-olds to a mentor, learning classic Jewish texts, encountering them and understanding what is the relevance to living in the modern world, podcastfellowship.org. And here is our interview with Val Katayev. Enjoy!
Welcome to OurTribe, the podcast that sits down with Jewish professionals and entrepreneurs to hear their stories, share their advice, and bare their Jewish souls.
Super thrilled to be here with Val Katayev. How are you, Val?
I'm good. Pleasure to be here, Tuvia.
Okay. Val, you've done some incredible things in your career and totally out of the box. You know, nobody dreamed of creating what you had created before you created it. So we'd love to hear your story and let's have it. Start from the beginning. Where were you born? Where were you raised?
So I was born in former Soviet Union, and it's the part of the country that before it collapsed, I lived in was Uzbekistan, which is in Central Asia. And my family moved out when I was about 11 years old. I was 11 years old. And, this right after Soviet collapsed in 92. We actually did pretty well there. So I'm not going to complain too much in terms of, not getting through. But my family's done pretty well. You can't be successful
in Uzbekistan. In Uzbekistan, they were doing pretty well?
Yeah, and relatively speaking, right? Like it's it's not like it's not like you were successful and rich or anything like that. You can't be, right? In fact, my grandfather was a famous singer. He was well known in all Central Asia. You could even actually find him on, there are YouTube videos of him with hundreds of thousands of views. And to this day, I grew up watching him on television screen. And by the way, it's not like here where you have cable with 500 channels. You literally had 2 channels back in Soviet Union, which was channel number 1 was Moscow and channel number 2 was Tashkent, which is the capital of Uzbekistan. So on a regular basis, I would see him on television. And so he's fairly well known. And like anybody else, you are a salaried man. So even if you're a famous star, you're actually on a payroll by the government, right? It's communism. So nobody was making more or less money. So, that star would make the same amount of money as a garbage person or whatever, or a teacher. I mean, and they're all important jobs, but, we're used to in this day and age or where we live, right? That if you're a star, you're going to be making significantly more than, public worker. So, but that's not the case.
Was he a popular singer, or he was singing?
Yeah, very popular singer. But it was like folk music. I mean, we wouldn't understand any of that, but it was more like the local language. So it was like more Uzbeki, Farsi, Tajik, because all these countries, they made up Soviet Union. So the Tajikistan and Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, right? So he would tour all these. He's well known. And that was the language he was mostly singing in.
Okay. And so you left at 11 years old when the Soviet Union collapsed, and your family came straight to America?
Yeah, I grew up in Queens, New York, and there was a number of other Jewish families that moved out of the Soviet Union all around the same time. Like a lot of people went to Israel, and a lot of people went to New York, especially in Queens, some Brooklyn, from like where I'm from, like again Uzbekistan. There was a big Jewish community that came from Uzbekistan to these areas. So, I went to school here. Sometime in high school, I started my first little business, and this thing called internet started to become a big thing. I built my first website at around 16, and then I was literally as soon as I got a computer. I got a computer at 16, and I built something right away with that computer. And then from there, I just kind of built businesses one after another. First being in the search space, so search advertising that nobody knew about. This is actually pre-Google. So I would buy advertising space on search engines for many brands, and I had 800 different clients, and I was a one-man show doing this. It's pretty big. At one point, I kind of figured out I was the second largest client. Actually, somebody at Google told me I was their second largest client. And when I started working with Google, and it was so early that the guy I was working with, his email address was literally mike@google.com.
Okay.
There was no initial, there was no last name, nothing. That's how early. So I used to do a lot of business with Google, and after that, I built another business. Kind of had a bit of a monopoly in ringtone distribution. So we built this thing where we were plugged into every music site. We were in front of 500 million people a month. I leveraged that. What was that?
Sorry, just tell me what ringtone distribution is, that where people can pick the ringtone on their phones and.
Well, if you ever look up, like if you go to music sites, or if you look up lyrics or anything about music content, you ever see these ads that say like, "Hey, send this ringtone to your cell phone." I don't know if you ever come across that. I don't know if you ever look up lyrics, for example.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So if you ever see that ad, that was my company doing that. We were monetizing websites in 60 countries, and again, as mentioned before, those ads would reach 500 million people a month. So we had this like massive access to music enthusiasts all around the world. I used that to build a media company, also going after those music enthusiasts. So we kind of rolled up the reach of all these music sites and built a media company so we could sell advertising to like T-Mobile and Pepsi and Mazda and all these brands who want to reach music enthusiasts and want to reach a way to target people based on their music interests.
Are you a musician?
No, not at all.
Okay, but enthusiast?
Yes, I guess you could say that. I'm not, I wouldn't say huge music fan, but like I listen to music like everybody else. I'm pretty average on that front.
It might be a good thing, because if you're really into music and then you're dealing with music and monetizing music, you might be too caught by the music. You want to listen to too many things and you won't be able to focus on the business. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm more of a marketing business person, and and I'm pretty good with tech. But music, the music gene didn't really come down to me from my grandfather.
Okay. So then, what was the next entrepreneur?
So then, somewhere in between those two companies, actually, while I was running those two, we're like, this is 2000, I believe, 9, and we're like, hey, we started to notice traffic showing up from mobile devices. Well, I guess interesting. And and this is not long after the iPhone came out, and we're like, oh wow, this is the internet on the phone might be the next big thing. So let's launch a business around that. So we launched as a company called MobileFuse. I still own that. I didn't, it's become a pretty sizable business, and we to this day it's growing very rapidly. And
what did they do exactly, MobileFuse?
So we focus essentially putting ads into mobile devices through the apps. So that's our focus, in-app advertising. So if you have any apps installed, whether it's a weather app or a news app, we have like over 2,000 apps on in our system. So the apps allow us to have a lot more granular data about you. So the advertisers, so we only have like Fortune 1000 type of clients. That we're able to make much better decisions on how to target the right person, because the data that we ingest on the fly. So the company actually processes something like, I believe last month we did 2.3 trillion ad requests last month alone. So there's a massive amount of data that's being cycled through the system, and then a lot of it just to figure out what is the best ad to show this person and to do the most efficient way. So that's that business. At some point, I did sell a couple of the two music companies. I actually ended up selling them around the same time, and I did. I decided to retire. I had, I want to spend more time with my kids, and because I haven't had a chance to do that. Building, I was actually CEO of 3 different companies all at the same time at that point. So I was running the 2 music companies and the mobile advertising business all at the same time. So when I sold those 2 businesses, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to retire. I handed over kind of transitioned the mobile business over to my partner, my co-founder, who's done an amazing job growing it since then. I just decided to retire at 32 years old. Years later, 3 years later, I realized that I couldn't figure out what my hobbies would be. So I was thinking, I would get on the racetrack and race cars, or I would do gardening the next day, just trying to find a hobby, something to do other than business. At the end of the day, I came to a conclusion that building is my thing. That is my hobby, and there's nothing much I could do about it. So 3 years later, I decided to start another company, and this time I really wanted to kind of help the families, right, the independents. So I didn't want to help, build something again for corporate America or corporations, right? Because that's historically I've always built businesses that are products and services and technology for corporations. I was like, what can I do to, build a great business and be successful at it and be able to scale, but I want to do it for family-owned businesses this time around, right? Main Street. And I started a business around the fine jewelry space. And so we basically built an infrastructure for fine jewelers. So anybody who owns a retail jewelry store, they could plug into our infrastructure, and we're essentially building an ecosystem for those jewelers. They're essentially being their backbone or their headquarters.
So but if they need to source, if they need to get, can you tell me
Yeah, sure. So
I'm a jeweler. What are my pain points? How are you solving them?
Yeah, sure. So if you think about the biggest jewelry company is in US or I should say in the Western world, is Signet. Signet actually owns a bunch of brands many of us know. Kay's Jewelers, Zales, Jared's. They bought Blue Nile. They bought James Allen. So they own all these brands. So they have about 3,000 locations. And really, really what they are is they're an $8 billion business with 3,000 locations that have salespeople in them. And then all the decisions are really made at the headquarters, right? All the R&D, all the buying, all the manufacturing decisions, all the marketing, all the tech, all the platforms, the communication. All that comes from that headquarters that they have. So, and that's what gives them the power to do it, right? Because they have scale to invest money into a lot of the stuff. The independent jeweler can't, right? Whether you have 1 store, 5 stores, even 20 stores, you just don't have that capacity to invest at that level, right? So we said, wait, these jewelers, the independent jewelers, which make up 2/3 of the business, make up 2/3 of the U.S. jewelry sales or fine jewelry sales.
Okay.
Going to do a much better job because they're ingrained into the communities, right? They've been around for decades, in some cases, century plus. They're part of the communities, in the local communities. Everybody, the people that live there know them. So they have all these relationships. What they're weak at is not having that ability to keep up with the times, put together strong strategies around marketing, or have the right technology in place, or help them with even things like manufacturing, or so anything that is not like relationship or management related. So what we've done is that we basically built that headquarters that Signet has, but we built one of those for the independent jewelers. So working with us, you get access to very advanced marketing techniques. You get access to television ads. We actually produce advertising, and then we syndicate it through stores for, you know, a fraction of the cost of what it costs for you to make that nice ad yourself, right? And we have 40 TV ads already in our library. So we only launched that a year ago, right? So we're able to just do many different things in marketing, tech, and also production on the product side. And now we're actually taking it to the next level where we now have, because we have more and more stores joining our ecosystem, or our collective, as we like to call it, we have now designers and other like jewelry designers and actually watch brands who are coming into our ecosystem and saying, hey, we want to be distributing, we want to sell through your independent jewelers. We'll distribute exclusively through you, through Jacalio Collective, into the collective. You're gonna, you know, and we also help the marketing because we're able to deploy the marketing at the same time for those brands, for those jewelers, and for the jewelry brands. So, for example, you're Michigan, a popular brand that we're very excited to have. Have you heard of Shinola watches? They're Detroit. They're made in Detroit, actually. So
I'm sure they're very good.
Yeah, they're put together in Detroit, so a well-known brand, very big in the Midwest. We're now the exclusive distributor of the Shinola watch brand. So when they put Shinola watches into our stores, we could deploy the marketing and make sure that the stores are taken care of in terms of the product, the right product shows up, but also is marketed locally in their market. So that's the that's kind of the business I'm focused on. I do have other businesses in my portfolio that I do own and completely unrelated to any of this. But this is the jewelry business is the one I'm fully involved with as a CEO at least.
And where do you want to take that? Where do you think that you'll have built what you envision for the Jacalio? It's called
Jacalio, yeah.
So Jacalio, like how far can that go?
I think if I have to use round numbers, we want to be in 10 years, we want to be in a world where there's probably Signet, right, with all their corporate owned stores, and they're going to do $10 billion at that point. We want to be a 10 billion, we want to represent $10 billion in our network. So maybe that's 1,000 to somewhere between 1,000 to 2,000 stores in our collective. And, we really should be, have a store in every market. There's a Walmart. And if we're representing $10 billion collective, there's really no reason for us not to be able to provide the services and the products and capture about $1 billion. So we believe we could be $1 billion business, servicing and selling different products into this ecosystem.
Okay, thank you. So that's where you are today with that as your main focus and with other unrelated companies. Let me ask you, when you're at the beginning, how, and it was a one-man show and you were managing 800 companies with ad space, search engine, like how do you stay sane? How do you budget your time? Like what I mean, a lot of people here, they may have great business ideas. Everybody has tons of ideas. How do you know what to focus on with your time?
I don't overthink it. I just something hits me, I just go and execute. I just do it, right? Even when I start my first business, I'm like, hey, that sounds like interesting. Let me try it, And so I won't overthinking about making a product perfect. I would just run an ad, like buy an ad and drive it to something that I just mocked up together and see how that performs. Because if it does, even slightly shows any kind of any like slight success, I'll look at it as hey, there's a way to improve upon, and then I could focus on improving it. But most of the times things don't show that success, right? So you could just trash it and start something new. And so what happens is with that mentality, what happens, and by the way, that was natural to me. I don't think I'm not going to say I was smart enough to think that way. Like I came up with that. It was just natural to me. I'm able to try 10 different things before the next guy tries one, right? And even my accuracy rate or my success rate is slightly lower, but because I tried so many different things already, I will come out with more successes because I'll try 10 different things. And if you take a whole year to try one thing because you wanted to make product perfect and you're just afraid to push it out live. And I see that mistake being done all the time. I think it's a lot of times people don't have the confidence. They need to overcome the confidence of not putting something perfect into the wild or into the world. So if you're that, if you worked for 1 year to try this one thing, you're probably going to have slightly better chance of success at that one thing than I would. But the thing is, I probably tried 10 different things already. And I'll probably hit a winner just for sheer number of tries I've had versus somebody who tried one thing or tested one thing. So I think it comes out to really about testing and just not overthinking it. I mean, that's been something that I've been always preaching, and I find that to be probably the part of my winning formula.
And that you could do because you were doing it all alone, right? You don't have to run it by
Well,
somebody.
it's still the case today. I mean, today I have hundreds of people in across my organizations, and it's still kind of the case. But yes, when I was doing that alone, I would just make a list of things. Hey, let's to try, and I'll give you and I would just start going through them. In fact, even when I was testing different clients, because it was all performance based, rather than spending a lot of time and trying to get the perfect deal with a client, I would just literally go for whatever deal they'll give me without wasting any time in negotiating with them. And I'll say, okay, sure, whatever you want to pay me per customer. And I'll just drive the traffic or the customers to that client and see how they perform. They don't perform, so I tried and we just move on, and I don't even just spend any time on going further. However, if it works, I go to the client and I say, look, I could deliver massive amount of traffic to you, right? But I need better payouts. Now I know that I could deliver. That's when you spend the time to negotiate. Then you negotiate a better deal. You show how much more you could do, right? And then you say, look, and then if you could do even more, you'd be like, hey, I could do even more if you pay me a little more, right? Because I could afford more advertising space. And usually they will give it to me. What would happen is I would end up with deals where I get paid 3-4 times more than anybody else they would pay. So like, my clients would be somebody like New York Times or music services like Rhapsody at the time, like Spotify. Today's there's Spotify, but eBay was a big client of mine. So I would get paid multiples of what everybody else would get paid, just because I could drive that volume and I would negotiate those deals. But again, I didn't spend time negotiating and overthinking even the deal structure because it was all about testing. The more I test, the more clients I try. I knew that I could find big winners by trying them. Another good example I use. In fact, the first time I came across search, the first time I wanted to try it, back in those days, there was a company called Overture, which is later became actually GoTo.com, which became Overture, which became Yahoo Search. Okay, that was the first really paid search advertising platform before Google. My first ads I turned on, and at the time there was no way to put in a spending cap. Today you could say, hey, I just want to spend $50 a day, or I want to spend $5 a day, or $500, and you could post on top of that. You put a total cap, and you could say when to stop the ads. Back then there was none of that, right? So I turned the ads on. I was something like 17 years old or something. I turned the ads on. I was working on the ads through the night. I turned the ads on and I went to sleep. I wake up in the morning, and I was a kid in high school, right? I was already kind of making some money because I had a website. I was making maybe $2,000 a month. I wake up in the morning and I spent $5,000, and that $5,000 spend generated only $1,000 in revenue. So I lost $4,000. Or actually, no, I think I spent $6,000 and it generated $1,000 and I lost $5,000 overnight. Literally overnight, I lost $5,000 as a kid in high school. At the time, I was probably making that much, maybe a month, right? So it's big money.
Yeah. The
lesson there was that most people would say, "Oh my God, I'm never going to do this again. I lost $5,000." My natural sense, and it was just like, this is something that's built into me, is, oh wow, I made that. I got $1,000 in revenue. I sold $1,000 worth of stuff, right? So I looked at the data. I was like, hold on, I could probably figure out how to cut down the costs and make to find what was working and what wasn't out of that $6,000 I spent, right? And that was the foundation of that business, and it was very successful. And it was like, kind of got me off the ground on everything else I built after that. But there was an important lesson there, right? Like look at where was the win? There was a success there, right? Even though I lost $5,000, there was still success. There was $1,000 that I did generate, and I was able to look into that $1,000 and figure out how to make it work. And after that, it just I got it closer and closer and closer. Maybe the next try, I lost $1,000, and at some point I was able to spend maybe $500 to generate 1,000. And then once you figure that formula out, then you just multiply it over and over, and you do that 100,000 and million and 10 million. At that point you just have a formula to just copy and paste.
Wow. Now I'm a more artistic type, and everything you're saying to me is very abstract, because I don't understand how any of this works. Is it for people like me? I know there'll be a lot of people like you are listening, and they'll say like, "Why are you slowing him down?" But can you break it down for me? What does it mean? Like, let's go back to the search engine space. Like, what is it? You're buying ad space. You're turning ads on. Like, what exactly is going on over there? Can you make it easy for me?
Yeah, sure. So to kind of go into the basics, I guess, if you go on Google, right, you search for engagement ring, right, near me or something. Search for engagement ring, right? Today you see all these ads, right, show up. If you go, you'll probably get all these different ads. Maybe some of them from local stores. Most of them actually not. Most of them big companies that want to advertise to you and sell you an engagement ring. When you search for an engagement ring, you basically say you're showing intent, right? You're saying, hey, I'm looking to buy an engagement ring, right? So I would put these ads into later Google to make sure that the customer comes to me to buy the engagement ring. But I would obviously redirect them to
right.
Yeah, so if you think about let's go to the basics, right? If you go to google.com, right, you search for an engagement ring near me. Let's just use that as an example. You're probably in the market to buy an engagement ring. So what I would do is I would place ads into all those results. So when you search for that, you see a bunch of ads, right? And you also see organic results. So you'll see ads from different stores, whether online or offline. And then you would see a bunch of organic results as well. So what I would do is on behalf of my clients, I would put ads into those search results, so that if you're looking for engagement rings, or if you're looking for books, or if whatever you're looking for, I would take that traffic and direct it to my clients.
Got it. Okay. Good. Okay. So now all of this, the building of the original business, and it sounds like this was the process through the other things that you went on to. It sounds like it has a lot to do with understanding the data and figuring out how to make it work for you, right? So how much of your time did you have to spend like working with the human connection and working with personnel and bringing in partners, and you said now you have hundreds of employees that are working in your companies. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so my first business was a one-man show. I had all these clients, and I had to figure out how to work days and nights to build all these flows myself. The second business, it started out alone. I did bring in some. I kind of bought out or merged with somebody fairly early on, and that kind of gave us a team of like 6 people. So that was also a pretty small team, but was very successful business, even more successful than the first one.
That's the ringtone distribution?
That's the ringtone, yeah, that's the ringtone business. After that, once we got into the media, we had to have salespeople, so there was another 20 people. The mobile business is now over 100 people, and I have a co-founder in that. And I do have other organizations other companies that I own. During my retirement, in fact, on the side, well, I got involved and kind of helped build a fund management business in the peer-to-peer lending space. I don't know if you know what that is, but that's kind of like marketplace lending. So we quickly went from almost zero to $1.7 billion of funds being put out through our funds. Later on, I started a real estate development company as well. So all these have different teams. I obviously have to have different partners. The real estate business is very unique. So I do have an amazing partner there that runs the show, and I'm in a more supportive, financially and in other ways. The fund management business also is not, there's a main partner who runs the operations, and but I'm very, I've helped it build. I helped build it and get clients, especially during my retirement days when I was able to just network and meet people, and also put a lot of my own money into my own funds. That's kind of how things started, but eventually that grew. So over time, I had to learn how to build those personal connections, because there's a limit of what you could do on your own. And there's always for me, and I think for most people, it's always the hardest thing is managing personnel. Um, and the jewelry business is very relationship driven, right? We have a lot of people, we have a lot of staff, we have a lot of clients. All of our clients have all very different ways of thinking, and a lot of decisions when you're dealing with family-owned businesses, right? A lot of the decisions I made, are kind of like gut decisions. And when you come from the corporate world, things are done a lot more, at least for me, are done more on the data-driven basis, right? Like, okay, the data shows that you should do this, and so you do that. It doesn't make sense to see this, the data showing you this. It doesn't make sense to go with your gut feeling of doing something opposite, right? Which, crazy enough, but that's what a lot of times what happens, what we see. So dealing with humans is a very different beast, especially when you're dealing with many, working with many of them. So a lot of it comes down to workflows. Culture becomes very important. Having the right people, not just the right people who have the right experience. Usually, it's not just experiences. Usually, it's the character. Some of our best employees actually had no experience in my business, and they would come for something that very administrative or something very basic. And then you kind of discover that they have certain drive, they have certain passion, in whether it's passion to learn or just passion to understand what is going on and make it better. And over the years, those people have become by far the most important people, and most productive people in my organization. So that, I think that's first and foremost, is like character and obviously ethics and stuff like that. But more important than just straight experience.
When you have so many things going on at the same time, how do you make sure that they're being done in the way that you, how do you know how much to be involved in, how to advise, when to advise? It's like you set up a schedule, like every week. Are you meeting with one of your businesses, one of the partners, and leading that business, and I'm making a report? I have no idea.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it depends on the business, depends on what's going on in the business at that particular time. Some businesses, I don't have to I don't, I'll have a monthly or maybe once every 2 months a call with the managing or the CEO of that business. Some cases, you get involved a little more often. Sometimes, there are fires to put out. I could imagine, when COVID hit and we had to figure out how to get that PPP money, and I had to make calls into my banking relationships. I was pretty busy, just helping all my companies survive at that point, right? So
that was during retirement or pre-retirement?
no, I already started the Jokalio when COVID hit. So we were about 2-3 years into the Jokalio when COVID hit. Yeah, but again, but there are other businesses that I typically will only catch up with the CEO of that business once every couple of weeks, or maybe once a month. All of a sudden, it became you're having those conversations multiple times a day, because you're staring down at 50 people on payroll, and you don't know where the payroll money's going to come from, and your revenue went down to zero overnight. So So things like that, like I would get pretty wild.
Wow. Okay, so now we didn't talk yet about your story as a Jewish person, and this is, you know, this is the point, one of the main points of our podcast. And so I'd love to know, growing up in Russia and then coming to the US and where you are today. Like, I'd love if you could give us some of that story too.
Yeah, so my Jewish story, I'll give you a little bit of background. Kind of because I think all of us, right, have stories, right, that we've been told, and or our families went through certain times, and depending where they lived or where they grew up, there were a lot of interesting stories. So my great grandfather was a rabbi, and he would do kashrut on the meat. And I believe this is around 1918 or 19, no, I'm sorry, earlier than that. So right around the time the communists started taking over Soviet Union. And I apologize, about 30s. I'm thinking about 1930s. So they just took over, so all religion was pretty much banned, right? So you're not allowed to practice religion. You're not allowed to have kosher meat. You can't have a synagogue. You can't pray, right? So the religion is banned. There's one religion. There's communism, and that's it. So he got caught doing kashrut, making kosher meat and they sent him to jail, and he died in jail because he refused to eat non-kosher food. And so that's kind of like, this is kind of like the furthest I know about my family. And he had a son, my grandfather. My grandfather, who lost his father at the age of like 5. He had this. He really learned about music very early on, and he would tell me how I would make instruments out of horse's hair, or tail, I should say, not hair. And but then he became a lawyer, and kind of went to law school there. He became a lawyer, and he always had like this big heart, right? And if you're Soviet Union and you're a lawyer, again, you're working for the government, and there's always been um, a lot of black market stuff going on, right? You're supposed to prosecute the woman who just stole a loaf of bread from the store, right? While you can't, they just don't touch these guys who steal trucks of bread on a daily basis, and they're selling it somewhere on the black market, right? So he couldn't handle that because it just wasn't, it wasn't who he was as a human being. And he decided to follow his passion, which is music. He became a professor at the university for music in music. He became somehow you guys start working for the radio, and when you work for the radio, you actually perform. And he became this famous guy, and people loved him. And the way you make money in Uzbekistan or in that region is weddings. So although nobody's supposed to really practice religion, most of Uzbekistan was predominantly Muslim, right? And the tradition was Muslim, more Muslims. Where I come from, a lot of traditions that the local Muslims had, we actually still to this day kind of picked up from that, from being there for hundreds of years, right? So the way you make money is not working for the government and being on television. The way you make money is because these, especially Muslim families, they would throw huge weddings, and they would be very lavish, especially if you have money. And they actually, even if they didn't have money, they'll spend all the money they could on a wedding. So he would travel across to all these weddings, and they would just throw money at him. Like literally, they would throw money at him and his musicians. That's why, we were always fairly comfortable, and because of that, you also always had a lot of connections. So if you don't run out, you have access to food, or you have access to things that people don't have, just because that's just the way the things worked over there, right? Because realistically, you walk into a store and they would generally be empty. There's nothing to buy, even whether you have money or not. So just to, the story there is that he followed his passion and he followed his roots, and again, the Judaism kind of led him there, because he was always believed into doing the right thing. And even though he was a Jewish person, this, the not just this country, but a whole Central Asia, which consists of multiple countries, again, predominantly Muslim, which is hard to believe this even today. He was well known. He was highly respected, and they would call this Jewish guy to do their weddings, right? And to this day, he has, he passed many years ago, but to his last day, he had fans and friends there. In fact, he's actually in the museum there. There's a museum of arts, and there's a section with him there. So to this day, he's very much a loved person. So what I'm trying to get at is, if you're doing the right thing, and you have that, and then you have a passion to the right thing, and just be good to people, I think eventually that kind of comes out naturally, and it doesn't matter where you are. You'll find a way to work with those people, right? It doesn't matter what religion they are, so it's probably more important today than what, with all the current events, right? to understand. But so anyway, I always thought that was very special to me, and I kind of, I always think about that when, making decisions, whether it's business or family or whatever.
So I want to ask you, so that's the fact that your great-grandfather gave his life up to be because he was a Jew. Was that a formative factor in your Judaism? Did that give you pride to be a Jew, or did you think that, oh, he was so extreme?
I don't think so. I think I started to appreciate that later in life. I think that I always found our people to be pretty driven and as a community, right? And we're always looking at ways to make things better and work together. And everything that's going on in Israel, even before October, even before that, and make things better wherever we are, right? Like we're always seem to be unfortunately forced to be on the move, right? But when we are there, we usually bring very positive things into those areas, right?
Sure.
And generally things tend to fall apart when we're driven out, right? That's and there's many reasons for that probably, but I always found that to be a big strength, that we could, Bruce Lee would say, kind of I forget the exact words he would say, but be like water, right? That's the strength. Being like water is very powerful. I think somebody
There's
asked
a source for that in the Talmud.
Right. Well, I don't know. You'll tell me. Maybe tell me what it says about that. I wouldn't. I'm not knowledgeable enough, but we're kind of like water, right? We're very good at adapting to wherever we are, and just like water, we create fruit, right? Wherever we are. So anyway, I just always thought that there is something special about our people, and how we improve the world for the better. And I don't know. So to me that it's that I just look at it like the bigger picture. But
on a personal level, when you're coming to Queens and your family was not observant at that time, so how did you come to wherever you are now? You're telling me that the big picture is that you admired what the Jewish people do when they enter a new place, how they uplift the community. But what on a personal level, what happened with you?
Well, I wouldn't call myself the most observant, so I'm very supportive in terms of whether it's supporting of the communities, and how do we make whether it's our community or outside community better, or where we need help to be helpful. It's hard to answer that question, to be honest with you. For me personally, I think it's kind of ingrained into me a bit. Just interacting with family. And most of my family is not observant. I mean, we follow, we have kosher homes. We do, like, I don't know. For everybody,
Traditional.
basics are different. So I don't want to call it the basics, but for everybody, it's different, relative levels. But yeah, it's hard to answer that question, how, personally it has it changed me. But I think it's the on the regular basis, your decision making is different. And that also, again, when you're having family, how you make decisions with your kids, how to raise the right kids who are also productive. But also in business, again, you just want to you want to do the right thing, right? And sometimes it helps a lot to have default answers to when you're when you have a target in place, or you have you're working towards a specific goal. It's much easier to make to get to that goal, where you have very default answer to things, on how to do things and how not to do things. And I think ethics has to do a lot with that.
Sure.
So anyway, that's kind of, I don't know if that answers your question necessarily, but that's, at least that's how I look at it.
I think I'm starting to understand. Let me ask you. It seems like, if I could analyze what I'm hearing, and I'm not such a good analyst, is that the move from working with big corporations and tech to retirement, and then back into the business world, and with more of a focus on on helping people, has something to do with what you're telling me about how you see the Jewish people that you belong to is one that is uplifting ethics, providing an uplifting ethical imperative and guidance, and you want to, and you're here, the understanding from your Jewish heritage that we're here in this world in order to help others. Corporations help others too.
Yeah.
But they help themselves a lot, and they help others too. But there's a lot of, I'm not going to go off on a soliloquy over here, but there's a lot of move even in corporations nowadays, that the corporate culture and the corporate giving, and they don't want to be the evil money grabbers. They want to show how they care. That's a big thing nowadays. But you're doing it. You actually, your move back into business was one that shows really that you want to help the small guys.
Yeah, and a lot of it, I think, is I think another thing that we over-index on, as a Jewish population, and is curiosity, right? And I think that says a lot about why Israel is what it is in terms of its proudness, and where it is technologically speaking, and its success. A great book that everybody should read is Startup Nation. I don't know if you ever read that.
I've heard of it.
What was that?
I've heard of it for sure.
Yeah, I definitely should read it. And it's all about, talks about why Israel became such a success in, because it doesn't really have the resources, doesn't have, so it kind of explains. And a lot of it was about it came down to like really curiosity, right? We're always curious about, wait, why is it done this way, right? And even in their military, in the Israeli military, it's okay. Unlike pretty much every military in the world, it's okay to question the decisions of your superior.
Unlike every military.
Unlike every other military, right? It's okay to go above your boss to his boss and say, hey, why is, so, and it's the same thing like, in the religion, right? We're always told, we're encouraged to question our religion, right? Or certain verses or certain things that we do, right? We're always questioning, right? And I think a lot of like my success came from that too. It's like, especially like the jewelry industry. To me, it was like, wait, why is it being done this way? Why can we try this way? Right. And people will say, well, it's just because that's the way it's been done for decades and decades, and I'll be the guy who's be like, you know what, let's just try the other way and see what happens. Even if my way is successful 40% of the time, I already fixed, I've made something better. 40% of the things that used to be done a certain way are now being done better. Even if I fail at, changing the other 60%. So I think the curiosity is like a big driver for me personally, but I think that's something that many of us have in common in a Jewish population, and that explains a lot about the success of Israel and success of kind of Jewish people around the world. and why we tend to uncover great things and win Nobel Prizes or find cures and all that kind of all those things.
What advice would you give as an experienced entrepreneur and also as a Jewish person to our core audience for this podcast, who is young Jewish people? They're discovering what Judaism means to them, and they're encountering like the classic texts and like, what does the Torah have to say about my life? And many of them are interested in being successful and to making their mark on the world. So, what piece of advice or pieces of advice do you have to give to them?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just summarizing what we just talked about, right? First of all, have the curiosity to test things or try things, right? We talked in the beginning of the podcast, we talked about testing and trying more things than not overthinking it. So you don't want to overthink it because you want to give yourself the time to try more things, to test more things, again, to be more and that curiosity has to drive that. Because for me, I was too curious to not know the answer. I don't have the patience to wait, right? So I think the curiosity, try, don't overthink it, and I mean, I still think that the staying to your passion is important, because I do see a lot of people try to force themselves into something that they don't like. Again, going back to the story of my grandfather, right? He became a lawyer, and again, it wasn't in him, right? So he never, once he followed his passion, I mean, he just blew up and became, a success, right? And he had 5 albums. He was on television all the time. So he followed his passion, right? And you see that a lot. And look, I'm not saying like everything is kumbaya, where your passion is something completely irrelevant,
Monetizable, right?
Or whether it's monetizable, or whether if you're nonprofit, that passion is not really helping anybody. Obviously, it's not. You have to have some realistic. There has to be something realistic behind it. But I think that's an very important thing, because that automatically drives you. And like I told you before, when I try to find the passion, I try to find hobbies, because my whole life I was building businesses and I didn't realize that was my hobby. For me, my businesses are never work. It doesn't feel like I'm working. I'm just having fun.
That's great.
So that even if you fail at something, you fail doing something you like at least, and you move on to the next thing. Then
I noticed on other podcasts that you've done that there's a lot of focus on bootstrapping as opposed to looking for funding that's going to obligate you to somebody. And I'm thinking to myself, although I didn't get into it yet with you, I'm thinking to myself, like, a lot of times the people have the passion and they don't have the resources to get it started, and maybe they're not as bold as you were to get the money flow and get the cash flow going already at 17 years old in high school, trying things out. So what do you say to that? I mean, it's definitely a prevailing culture of finding funders to invest in your idea. I have friends that do it. But what's your take on that? I'd love to hear it.
No, I'll be honest with you. Some of it is driven by fear. The reason I was bootstrapped, I was lucky that I was able to make be successful, make some money very early on. That kind of cascaded into bigger and bigger things that I could invest on my own. But a lot of that is also driven by fear of losing other people's money. So even to this day, I have a fear of for example, my real estate business. We've now, at first it was supposed to be just my money, and I would invest my money to build buildings and in New York City area. And after we've done a few projects, people start asking, like, oh, can I be involved? Can I put my money into it? Because they see that you're successful, right? And I've always had fear of taking somebody's money, because if I lose my money, it's okay. I have I'll be okay, and I know I'm managing my risk at all times. So that loss is kind of built into my thinking already, right?
Right.
If I'm taking somebody else's money, and if I ever lose their money, It's a very uncomfortable
Sure.
thought for me to lose somebody else's money, right? Now again, now we do
Somebody's
have
trusting you.
investors.
Right.
Yeah, we're very careful. In real estate, the risks are lower, so I'm kind of much more comfortable doing that. Or in our fund management business, right? It's very low risk kind of funds. We're not like hedge funds losing, going to win it all or lose it all. It's not like that. So I think that's kind of what's been driving it as well. And it's the again, I guess the fear, because what does that mean to my name, to my credibility, or and I don't want somebody think that I did I lost somebody's money because I was negligent with it, or whatever it is. Well, we weren't smart enough to take somebody's money. So I think it's actually that's driving it more, because I could have went the other direction and say, oh, look, I built this couple of companies very successfully, and let's build, the next big thing. And I have a name now, and I could go to VCs and get $100 million plus, in funding, because it's not that hard to do once you have the credibility to do it, right?
Okay.
I personally just shied away from it because I like to be, again, it's like owing somebody money or, delivering. But also there's the concept of, okay, if I'm taking somebody's money, I have less control over things, right?
Right.
For me, again, going back to the curiosity, trying to things, and I don't want to have to be in this position to be explaining to somebody why I'm doing it a certain way, because I do tend to just try things on a fly, and I enjoy doing it. So sometimes the decision is made based on what am I going to really enjoy doing in my life, as opposed to what's just going to produce the highest amount of financial outcome.
So you're saying it's not intrinsically risky or wrong to go for investors. It's just something that you, as personally, you didn't want to have the obligation, the responsibility of being in charge of other people's money, and you also you didn't want to lose the control over how you wanted this project to develop. Right? But as somebody
exactly. I mean,
somebody who's less particular about those 2 points could just as well do it and be just as successful.
Well, the biggest successes went the other way, right? The actually biggest successes are not bootstrapped. I mean, if you look at and it started by Jews, right? Google, Facebook, all these guys took big VC money and built. It's not even multi-billion. It's not multi-trillion dollar businesses, right? So there's clear evidence that investor capital is very valuable and could propel to heights that are like any others. But that's just not the path that I've used, and usually when I go down that path, again, in real estate, like, I'm still the largest investor in my own projects, even though I have investors. I'm by far the biggest investor in all of my projects. So it's not like I took my chips on the table and then I just let the investors' money take the risk. So if I'm going to take anybody's money, and if I'm ever going to lose anybody's money, I'm going down.
You're going down more than they are, right?
I'm going to go down with them, yeah.
Captain goes down with the ship. Okay, Val, I really appreciate your time and your insights, and it's fascinating to hear your story and what you built. And Hashem should just bless you to continue to grow and help people, especially with this new venture, which is really helping the little guys. And bless your family, and we should hear a lot of good things.
Thank you. Well, listen, I appreciate what you're doing for people, and for young people especially. I think it's very important. Education. We'll again, as a Jewish people, are very big on education, so I think you're bringing that to them. So very, keep doing that.
We're very grateful. Okay, have a great day. Have a great day.
Thank you, Rabbi. Take care.
Bye-bye.
You've just listened to another great episode of OurTribe, the podcast, brought to you by the Podcast Fellowship and hosted by Rabbi Tovia Kopstein. Tune in each week every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time to hear more great episodes of OurTribe, the podcast. If you have any suggestions or questions, email us at ourtribe@podcastfellowship.org. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to help the tribe thrive.